snacks.
What a do, snackers, snackettes, and snack X's. Your boy Gage is here with jokes. Give me a double. Yo,
Yo, yo!
you are now tuned in to Lodi Snacks Weekly, where we get together once a week and we talk about things that are happening in pop culture. And
Today,
today, we mourn the loss of PlayStation's PC ports. We welcome the return of Brock Lesnar. I think we'll get there. We'll talk about LotCon from this weekend. But before we do that, Jokes has a job to do.
mm-hmm.
Get the link to our website up. You can go check us out. Make sure you know what's going on because there's a lot going on. The calendar is filling in really, really quickly. It's getting a little out of hand, to
Hey,
be
listen,
honest.
there's overlap everywhere now.
Yeah, we're at a point where we have to pick and choose. Like, there's just a
Mm-hmm.
lot happening. So the easiest way to kind of keep up with what's going on is follow our social media. One of the things you can do is follow us on Patreon. If you can go there and support us, we greatly appreciate it. And speaking of Patreon, it's time for the Patreon 619 Hall of Fame.
Yes, so let's shout out our top tier patrons, starting with Anthony Cunningham, Marcus Houston, Susan Dortch, Tyrone Carson, Meticulous Skin, Alex Lee, Ellis Mbe, and Kermit Ferguson. Thank you very much. We truly, truly appreciate it.
Indeed, we do. And now it's time for hashtag WHHW. What had happened was, which of course is last week's news. It's over there somewhere. We got to get to it. Jokes hook me up.
Number one.
All right, Jokes, look, this is sort of a double whammy, kind of a 2-in-1, because PlayStation a few days ago announced a price hike for PlayStation Plus pricing, which is, I don't know, maybe par for the course at this point. It's only going up like a couple of bucks. Still, just with the way that things are going in the game industry and costs continuing to rise, I think it's a tricky situation to navigate. But on top of that, today, based on a social media post to Blue Sky from Jason Schreier, who is like, I don't know, he's almost the end all be all when it comes to like digging in and finding the information from people about things, especially when they're, about the game industry. This is the post that he put up. Scoop: PlayStation Studios business CEO Herman Hulst told staff in a town hall Monday morning that the company's narrative single-player games will now be PlayStation exclusive, confirming Bloomberg's reporting from earlier this year. Now, mind you, that reporting was also his. Jokes. Let's talk about this for a little bit. First of all, what do you think about? We're gonna skip the price hike portion for a minute because I feel like we're not gonna have a choice but to kind of circle back to that. But let's talk about the exclusivity piece, because I feel like that's the key point to hone in on, and I think that it's related to the decision to. Well, I mean, the price hikes are going to come anyway. But what do you think about this? What do you think about Sony deciding to go away from porting their single player games specifically, to PC?
I think it's stupid. Like, especially right now. Now, with raising the price of the console, you're raising that entry level to get people in to play said games on your console. But you do have a player base that's already built in where PC is. And you know what? People will gladly play them there.
True.
They have these awesome gaming rigs that they can crank those specs up depending on what kind of build they have. And it also opens you up to people maybe that, for whatever reason, wouldn't buy PlayStation because they have a grand PC or whatever, but they're now somewhat in the PlayStation ecosystem depending on the game, login credentials, like all that type of stuff that you have to go through. I personally think it's a bad move. I get you want to get people to, get your console, get further into the ecosystem, but after you just hike the price up, especially if you're someone that's coming from a PC and you have a fairly decent rig, your eye would probably go more to the PS5 Pro. But when we're talking like
Sure.
$1,000,
Mm-hmm.
the type of upgrades that you potentially could do to your computer with $1,000 can be wild to play some of those games on. But I think it's
I
a
mean,
step in the wrong direction.
I think it being a step in the wrong direction remains to be seen. And I say that because I think PC gaming is overrated. I think it's highly overrated. And while I say that as a console player, I think that the reality of the situation is you're 100% right. That, like, if somebody has poured the time, effort, and money into putting together a rig that's a PC that can play games at the highest spec and so forth, then yes, they put a lot of money into it, and they're probably not likely to be people who are going to go for a regular PlayStation. They'd have to spend $1,000 to get a PlayStation Pro, right? A PS5 Pro. However, the same things that are making consoles more expensive are making everything about PC gaming more expensive, with the
That's
exception
valid.
of the cost of games.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's making consoles go up in price as the consoles get older, as opposed to every other year with all other consoles before this generation, is AI. And it's the cost of the chips, and the chips being used up and going away. And that is having the same effect on PCs, on hard drives, on storage space, or like all
Mm-hmm.
of those things are also now skyrocketing. So here's the thing: PCs have always been a bit more expensive when you look at it in terms of trying to build something that is going to last you a while and, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
than consoles have. What consoles have always had over PC has been ease of use.
Mm-hmm.
Just plug it in and turn it on. And outside of
You're
maybe
good.
having to do an update every now and again, you're pretty good. You're not fumbling with settings and changing it. And I think that the barrier of entry for a lot of people that got into PCs because pricing was about equivalent, right? And so forth. I think a lot of people, even though we saw an uptick in PC purchases and gaming, I think a lot of people bit off more than they could chew. I think a lot of people started getting into it, especially younger people, not realizing that there's more work that's necessary in order for you to
Mm-hmm.
get in and really start playing a game. And it's not as simple as it is on a console. And for some people that are young, they've never had a console,
Mm-hmm.
right? They've started on PC and maybe have a Switch. So the reality of it is, without having access to whatever numbers Herman Holst is seeing that is driving him to say, hey, it's not worth it for us to spend the time and the money and the effort putting those games on PC, even though we sell more because of the time and the money and the effort that it takes to port it over, or something like that, right? That,
Mm-hmm.
if anything, it makes it more worth it to spend that time and money and effort making these games as great as they can possibly be and only be available on this system, making it worth it to make that purchase, to actually spend that money. And it would not surprise me if we begin to see Sony kind of push that marketing speak in
Mm-hmm.
some way of how it's easier to just do it on console, how simple it is to just do it on console. Now, they won't do that altogether because, again, apparently their plan is to continue to allow for their multiplayer games to also be on PC, which again makes sense because you want to capture the largest audience possible so that you can keep those games running. So your multiplayer, your games as a service, that makes sense. it also is a little bit of a tricky landscape when PlayStation's probably not going to put out another console. I'm gonna say for like another 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're nearing the end of what should be the normal life cycle of a console, right?
Yep.
Normally 7 years is about it, which would technically mean that we should be seeing PlayStation 6 next year, right? Microsoft seems to be on track to do that, to put out a
Mm-hmm.
console, either jumping the gun and going early and putting something out as a surprise this year, or having something ready to go with Project Helix, which they've already announced, ready to go next year. It doesn't seem like Sony's ready to do that with PlayStation 6, especially not considering where they are from a price
Mm-hmm.
standpoint. And if that's the case, then it means that they intend to allow people to continue to be in and play in this very same ecosystem for much longer than normal. And right now, to me, if I had to bet, I'm thinking 2030. Like that's where I am. I'm thinking 2030 is probably when we see the next PlayStation. And all of that is based on cost and just what's
Mm-hmm.
happening in the industry right now.
Parts and all that good stuff.
Microsoft, on the other hand, putting out essentially a hybrid console that also plays PC games means that they're doing both and they're really competing a little bit more with what Steam is doing. And they
Mm-hmm.
have to be able to compete with what Steam is doing. And the big difference is going to be that games are going to be cheaper on Steam because they always have been
They
cheaper on
always
PC
have
than they
them
are on
awesome
console.
sales.
So if you're trying to choose between whether you do the next Xbox, even if it does have the exclusives and all of the titles at the cost that they are for place, for PC, you might go with a Steam machine over going with whatever Microsoft does, unless they continue to change things the way they have been changing. So the
Mm-hmm.
landscape is so very different that I do think this is probably a smarter move than it seems like on the surface, because it seems like they're just leaving money on the table.
Yeah,
But
they will.
realistically, they got Rod said, I understand, but it's a dumb move. I don't know that it is. I just don't know that it's a dumb move. And I'm gonna tell you why. Look, Ross said 1,000 for a PlayStation. No.
Nah,
But
it's
people will
hey,
pay
listen,
it.
they
People
will
will pay
like
it.
it's $900. But the thing is, if you're someone that wants to play online, you got to get PlayStation Plus, which immediately is going to, especially
Which
if you
is
pay for the year
more
up front,
expensive.
that immediately is going to throw you right into the $1,000 territory on there.
Look, could that backfire on them? Yes, because realistically, if the next Xbox console is also a hybrid PC, I just can't see how they're going to continue to charge you to play online. And
Play
that means
online.
that Sony will be the only one then charging you to play online.
It's
Like
funny.
I just don't know that, right. That'll be a complete flip.
Flip one.
You know what I mean? So like I don't know that works, but the reality of it is that there are people who are paying that money for PlayStation 5 Pros now. Like they're doing it now.
Doing
So
that.
I think that's gonna be
What up?
part of
What
what they're
up?
doing. Something, Adam. Um, and while it is a lot of money, hey Kai, a lot of people paid $1,000 for the portable ROG Ally Xbox,
Hey, listen, that's very valid.
right? Like it just I don't know. I think it remains to be seen. It
Mm-hmm.
could easily go either way. What I will say is when you have games lined up like Spider-Man 3, Wolverine, Marvel Tokon Fighters, which Tokon Fighters I'm sure is going to be PC too because it's a fighting game which is
Mm-hmm.
multiplayer, so they're going to want a giant audience, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that one maybe doesn't. But like when people start seeing the hype around Wolverine, if that game does anywhere close to what Spider-Man did, that joint is going to sell consoles.
That joint's gonna move.
People are going to pay the money, and then you got to remember you're not going to see Grand Theft Auto 6 on PC for at least a year. At least a year. And that game alone is going to move consoles.
Yep,
And
no doubt
if
about.
you're going to buy a console for it right now, the one you're going to want to get, it's going to
Yeah,
be that $1,000 PlayStation 6. Like I just like PC gamers will have to wait. What up,
what up,
K?
Kay?
If they want to play GTA 6, they're going to have to wait if you're a PC
Hey, listen,
player.
PlayStation already putting that out in front of people. Like people that are still like, obviously the PS4 still like the biggest piece of what they have. People added Grand Theft to their wish list, and that
Mhm.
joint immediately pop up. Listen,
Mhm.
if you
Mm-hmm.
want to be able to play this, you got to
Mm-hmm.
get yourself a PS5 because
I mean, look, on that note, right? Like, there's also talk that Microsoft is talking about doing the same thing, right? And going back to exclusives and pulling away. And it's like,
mm-hmm.
you sold 5 million copies of Forza Motorsport 5. I mean,
on
Forza Horizon
PlayStation.
5 on PlayStation. And now you're going to pull that away? You got to
If
do,
y'all can,
like,
I mean, y'all can probably afford to take that hit, but like, I don't know.
it's Microsoft. They can afford to take the hit.
I,
But
but it's
what
like I
happens to the
have this,
studios if the studios don't do well enough?
I can have this bucket of money that like literally is just
Mm-hmm.
sitting there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why would you? I get extra costs and small things associated, but come on, like that's just a for
I
them.
mean, look,
Yeah,
I
it's a
think
drop in the hat.
it's a I think there's a broad scale, right? Of like when you look at the landscape of entertainment right now and the consolidation of ownership of IPs,
Mm-hmm.
right now we're seeing the industry, I feel like, rush to go back to having exclusive ownership of certain things, right? Because there's money in that, right? And so as you're seeing that kind of thing happen, like Sony's control over their IP with something that's as big as The Last of Us, right? With
Mm-hmm.
what they did with HBO, like as they're planning other games, they got this God of War show that's coming.
Mm-hmm.
That's gonna be exclusive to being on PlayStation the next go round. You know what I mean? Like having those kinds of things that kind of get into people's heads and the zeitgeist of being, oh, there's a whole other thing you can do, having ownership and control over it and where it exists is like, well, look, if you want to play it, you got to come here and you got to play it here and you got to be in our ecosystem. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a tricky move. Um, and I don't think any of us are seeing enough of the numbers to completely understand it, but clearly they're seeing
Yeah,
something
they're seeing
that,
something.
that we're not seeing that's making them go, you know what? It's not worth it. And mind you, they bought entire companies like Nixus, right? Just to handle doing like PC ports. Like they basically
Mm-hmm.
bought that company for the sake of it. So like what happens to that company if
I
they're
know
just like,
that
yeah, we just not.
that already feels like either they're gonna fold them or
Mm-hmm.
somehow I don't know how they could. It's hard for them to like probably buy themselves out from the company unless someone like say a Microsoft. Like I
Right.
mean they don't need technically a company that could do PC ports, but it's like
I
depending
mean, they
on
got more studios and they can
certain
handle that shit.
data and things they could pull them in, gather certain data that they didn't have before. Now that they came from the PlayStation side of what they can
Mm-hmm.
obtain, but they wouldn't necessarily need them.
I think you're right, man. Look, it remains to be seen how it turns out. I'm not sure that going back to exclusivity is going to be the right thing, but you got to remember that we only like really went away from exclusivity within like the past 4 years,
Mm-hmm.
like for real. So like most people, I don't even think
Mm-hmm.
most people have even really dealt with it. What we have here. So Rod said, got the PS4 during the pandemic just because I only wanted to play 2 games on that platform. Upgraded to a refurbished PS5 after a good NYCC. My PC will be doing the heavy lifting, leaving too much money on the table with mostly broke folks out here by pulling back. Look, I'm not disagreeing with you as far as that's concerned. But I think at this point, the reality of it is gaming has already gotten too expensive for most
For the
people.
average. Mm-hmm.
And I think because now it's basically priced most people out, gaming is becoming one of those things that like you either have the money to do it or you don't. Like PC gaming used to kind of be like that. It used to be that really, if you were a PC gamer, you had to have the kind of money necessary to buy a rig that was powerful enough to be able to run games to make it worth it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you could run it like a potato, but nobody wanted to do that, right?
Nobody wanted
So
to do that.
consoles made it easier and we're used to the pricing going down, but that's
What up,
not
Z?
the case anymore. What's up, Z? So like I just don't I 100% get what you're saying and where you're coming from. But I also think that like we're in a minority in terms of what the grand landscape of gamers looks like, what they're playing and what they're doing. The sheer number of people who like don't actually care about graphics that are just like playing Roblox and just
Mm-hmm.
playing Fortnite. You know what I mean? And like would be fine if Call of Duty looks exactly the same every year as long as they get more of it. Like it just we're in this place where like the way that games are fed to us and what we play and how we play is so different now from what it used to be, that it might be that like we have to go back to exclusivity. There's a part of me, oddly enough, that thinks that if they can figure out how to get the money right, we might end up back in a place like we used to be with NES and or SNES and Genesis, where like the same game would come out, but two different studios would make the game. Like somebody would sell the licensing to two different studios, and they would develop, and like, yeah, you'd have Aladdin on the Genesis, but you'd have Aladdin on the SNES, and they weren't the same game,
And
or whatever.
As a kid, it was like, I didn't understand that. Like, because I did that with obviously the Power Rangers movie. When that game came out, the version of it came out on Super Nintendo, version of it came out on Sega Genesis. I was in Funko Land. It had just come out, or one of the versions had just come out. I think the other one was following behind. Had the Super Nintendo one. Went in the store and they had it on Genesis. I'm going to play. I'm like, as a kid, mine's not. I'm like, Mom, why is this different than the one that we have at home right now? I'm like, I need
you
that
wouldn't
one.
you wouldn't know. It's one of those things that like, look, that's not likely to happen, right? But in terms of the way the landscape is, right? If you're Microsoft or you're Sony and you own IPs, right, and you don't have enough teams to work, like you want to resurrect old IPs just because you have stuff that you own and you want to give it a shot, you're gonna take those IPs and you're gonna let people pitch you the best ideas that they have for that IP, and then you're gonna greenlight it and say, this is how much money you got, and go and make it happen, you know what I mean, or whatever. And like, maybe they let that exist somewhere else, but they're definitely gonna be like, we own Insomniac, they're making Wolverine for us, and it's only gonna be on PlayStation. And like, that used to mean something. Like when you would say only on PlayStation, that also meant not on PC. And we lived like that for like 3 decades. Like, it's not like, you know what I mean? Like, going back to that isn't like that bananas, truthfully, because it means that people will pay the money that they need to pay to be on PlayStation Plus, and that's going to bring them extra money. And you know what I mean? All of that kind of stuff. I just think I think they're seeing something we're not seeing as consumers. We don't like it because everything's getting more expensive, right? So we'll see. Hook me up, jokes.
Number two.
The team, per usual, had the esteemed pleasure of being at LotCon this weekend at Comic Logic Artwork and Books in Ashburn, Virginia, and always a good time.
Always a good time.
They are a family. I was gonna say they're like family. That would have kind of been lying. They're family. And so we always have a good time there. We got to try a lot of snacks. There are snack bites forthcoming. Jokes, talk to me a little bit about your time at LotCon this weekend.
LotCon was amazing. It was a bright sunny day. Like there was little rain had trickled in here and there, but it was a bright sunny day. It was the perfect day. It was a little hot, but everybody managed. Those people out, drinking their waters and stuff, staying out there. But the fun, seeing the different vendors, the different artists, different writers that were there was absolutely amazing. It's always a great time, and it takes the whole parking lot area, the sidewalk. Like there's something through there that I feel like anybody would be able to walk in there and find something. And then while you're there too, of course, Comic Logic, you have the comic shop that you can go into as well to see different things that you may not see out there while you're in the lot space as well. But tons of familiar faces. We got to meet some new people while we were there. It's always a great time.
Yeah, here's the thing. It's most of the conventions that that we do are like what feel like standard conventions, right? Like they're inside of a hall, the convention center, something along those lines. The only convention we really go to that feels different from the standards is BlurCon, right? And part of the reason why BlurCon feels the way it feels is because there's so much stuff going on outside. When I say that, like, the only thing that they're really doing outside is they got a DJ or maybe a stage or something. There's some music outside, but they got the food trucks outside. And that just brings people outside. People just kind of hang out outside, and it makes it feel like a cookout, a homecoming, something like that. A block party. LotCon feels like a block party. Like the only thing it's really missing is like some speakers. You know what I mean? And some music set up on one end. Because it has that outdoor block party, but it's also like a market. You know what I mean? Kind of thing, right? And it feels like an environment for families. A lot of the artists, the writers, the people who are there with tables set up know each other, are familiar with each other, have been coming there for years on end now. This was the 9th one. So, getting ready for number 10, which always happens in the fall. They do a fall LotCon right before Halloween. It's a really good time. They've gotten some really good guests to come and sit in at the convention itself. So yeah, I mean, look, it's always a blast. I highly recommend that, like, if you're in the DMV area, it's a Sunday afternoon. It's from like 12 to 4. Just come, hang out, check out some of the vendors. If you see us, there'll be some snacks. Jokes, why don't you go over some of the snacks we had while we were there?
So we had a couple different setups of Doritos. So we had gingerbread Doritos. We also had Whopper Doritos. You got to watch the videos to see how they actually turned out, though. Firecracker or Fire Pop Oreos? So
Firecracker Pop.
Cracker Pop. I think it was Firecracker. But essentially, it was like your ice pop. The tradition, like the red, white, and blue. Inside of an Oreo, like it was 3 flavors in one. It was like cherry, a strawberry. I don't even.
It was like a raspberry. It was like a raspberry.
Yeah, that was on there. We had Reese's peanut butter cups with marshmallow.
We did.
Interesting. I personally will take just a regular Reese's. And I think I'm missing. Oh, and
sizzling
the other
summer barbecue, sizzling summer burgers, Utz potato chips. Yeah, look, it's a lot. It was a lot for the palate. There was a lot going on. We tried a lot of things. Some things were better than others, which is normal.
Agreed.
I don't think we had a single thing, though, that we agreed was an actual certified loading snack. That was a full fail.
Yeah, everything. Some tasted okay, but you weren't gaming with any of those snacks in any shape or form.
Not at all. Yeah, matter of fact, I don't think we recommended most of them. Look, you'll see the videos. They're coming soon. Look for the reels.
Look who in the building.
Oh man, Tardy Ty, bro.
What up,
man? What up, Tardy Ty? Everybody's good, bro. How you doing, man? Long time no hear from.
Man, Rob was
no see you, no Tardy. My man been super.
Stomach bubbling.
Let me tell you something. It was water, palate cleansing required in between for sure. But look, the convention itself was good. Like, again, just really good. It was cool. They had like different from what they've done in the past. They had a separate section just for like authors that was set up. That was like really cool. Up against the side, which kind of gives them some of their own space, and for people who are interested in those things, a place to go, check that kind of stuff out. So
K throwing shots.
Hey, K not wrong though. I've been pretty absent. You know what I mean? We don't call roll before the show starts, but we could.
Hey, bro, we gonna start calling roll.
we could, but can't do assigned seats. That's the problem. You know what I mean? Yeah, LotCon was great. It was a blast as always. Awesome. Looking forward to the one that's coming up in fall. Again, if you ever get the opportunity, come hang out. Hook me up.
Number 3.
Jokes. This
Sir.
one's on you, bro. You interrupted my phone with a picture of a grown man.
The picture of a grown man.
Yeah, talking about look who's back. So Brock Lesnar decided to show up on Raw.
Mm-hmm.
Now look, normally I wouldn't care. But we already had a conversation about how he secretly retired at WrestleMania. This one's on you, bro. You got to tell me something.
So for those that aren't, fully into it, I'm sure you've been keeping up with some of the stuff that we've been doing at the Finisher podcast. Brock Lesnar versus Oba Femi went down at WrestleMania. Mm. Oba Femi beat Brock, and after the match was over, Brock decides to leave the boots in the ring, the boots in his gloves. So for those that aren't aware, with wrestling, when you leave your boots in the middle of the ring, that's clearly, it's the sign that, you're stepping away, you're retiring. I mean, it works in some other sports as well, too. And for what we understood, Brock's contract was supposed to at least get him through SummerSlam, because SummerSlam was going to be in Minneapolis, Minnesota, his hometown, which kind of signaled that, like, this is probably where things are going to wrap up. But he hit us with that and essentially stepped aside at WrestleMania. And afterwards, we saw a side of Brock that we typically don't see, him thanking fans, talking to, like, things you wouldn't typically see Brock do, which really, dude is really stepping aside. Yeah. He's really stepping aside. But come yesterday, Oba Femi has been issuing an open challenge every week since WrestleMania, having just different wrestlers step to him to see who can prove that they deserve to be able to compete with him. And yesterday, Brock decided to just attack him out of nowhere. So the big play on this right now is obviously with, there's been all these releases and adjustments to contract renegotiations and things like that, is apparently Brock was about to step out on, his contract that had him going through at least SummerSlam. And of course, the rumors just, he kind of had to step back in. And so, those lawsuits and things wouldn't necessarily go flying around, because TKO is doing business a lot differently than what typically WWE would do on their individual. And of course, that's just a rumor what it is right now. But
because you would think that Brock, even when we talked about it before with him leaving, what kind of made it feel like it solidified that as a fact was because after he did that and after WrestleMania was over, that's when we started to see all the negotiations, and we knew that it was TKO that was kind of forcing those changes and asking people to renegotiate contracts and letting people go and that kind of thing. And so it was kind of like Brock has been in UFC, like he knows what TKO does. He was dealing with UFC and TKO before they had anything to do with WWE. So it just seemed like maybe he saw the writing on the wall and was like, yeah, nah, they're not getting ready to get me. But here's what I'm going to tell you. He did that before everything changed with Roman Reigns being set up to be on everything.
Mm-hmm.
And now that Roman Reigns is no longer set to be on everything, I can imagine that they found whatever money Brock Lesnar wanted for the remainder of his contract.
Now, partially because after, all those dates disappeared off a Roman schedule, a lot more dates actually and then got added back to it, including the one in Baltimore.
Sure.
So I don't know. And now, there are rumors that there are a number of stars that did take significant restructuring and pay cuts in there.
Yes.
Don't know who
they added house shows back in.
They added house shows, which completely, and supposedly, this is a whole nother conversation, they're talking that house shows are going to be a lot, the affordability of being able to come to an event. Obviously, they're not going to be, your pay-per-view events and all like those type of things, but it's going to be a cheaper entry level once again to get you back in. But then when you go and do that, it's like, did it make sense for you to then say, oh yeah, we're going to renegotiate certain people's contracts because you're not necessarily at the live event, but it's like, now you're going to have some backup for people to show up, because I know you're not going to want to put all of your main people on those house shows. Like, it would suck to have your champ. Don't get me wrong, you want your champion to show up at those shows once or twice here and there, but you don't want them to get hurt and then they can't be on your main shows.
Well, their roster's too deep. I think that's part of the problem. Look, I think Lesnar coming back is. I'm not sure if it's a good sign or not. Right? Like I don't know if that means that just contractually he was like, all right, you know what I mean? I got to do it. I don't want to deal with all the behind the scenes stuff. So let me just go, fulfill my contract or whatever. But I mean, look, does it seem to you like this is going to be a reoccurring thing every Monday? Is he going to be on Raw and SmackDown? Is this like what are we really? When is SummerSlam?
SummerSlam's not until what, the end of August? And right now, and of course,
a lot of time.
The rematch. So they did set up the rematch between Oba Femi and Brock Lesnar, but that is happening at Clash in Italy, which is literally 2 weeks away. Like, to me, that seemed like that was going to be the setup potentially to get us to SummerSlam and figure some things in the middle of it. But no, this is going to be at Italy's first pay-per-view event. So I'm sure they wanted to have something massive on that card to have. And I mean, by all means, Oba Femi versus Brock. Now, they can easily, Brock takes the victory there, which would give them one apiece. And then, we could have, the trifecta, that final match to really settle the two of them at WrestleMania. I mean, at SummerSlam.
SummerSlam, yeah.
So this
totally
could just be the middle of it. Okay, it's like, honestly, I'm pretty confident Oba Femi is his real name. I believe he just shortened it. But I'm more than certain Oba Femi is his actual legitimate name.
You got me. I generally think wrestlers who use their regular name are weak. They should have a powerful, strange name, stage name. Unless their name is Andre and they happen to be giant, because that's cool. That's fine. Like I'm good. I'm good with that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, man.
Kinda part of his real name, and then I'm sure he just wanted to, because I know his real, I don't know if it's, I think it's his last name, can be a little bit of a tongue twister, and obviously you got to be able to have the announcers and have everybody be able to actually say your name when they're promoting and doing stuff. So they gonna have that kind of, like, your name is Oba Femi. Easy enough.
Oh, yeah. I mean, hopefully it means that if when he has to go, eventually he still has ownership of his name. That's kind of what it comes down to.
I doubt it.
At the end of the day,
I'm sure WWE trademarked.
If it's his real name, he could do that. We just had that discussion about New Day.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So, like, yeah, that'll be all right. All right, look, that wraps it up for WHHW. That wasn't all of last week's news, but it was the things that we could cover right here, right now. The other things we'll talk about when we get to the put a pin in it section later on in the show. But right now, we got to talk about the top 5 most important episodes you need to watch of The Mandalorian to get ready for Mando and Grogu coming out this week. Now, early reviews are kind of like,
shaky.
They're a little shaky. Overall, Rotten Tomatoes has it positive, but like, I think IGN gave it a 5.
It's like 5, yeah.
That's not looking good. However, I'm also, again, kind of in the place where I think that this movie is supposed to kind of be a bit of a return to form / something a little more for children. It feels like, based on like the second couple of trailers, that it's going a little more Indiana Jones, high adventure, kind of thing than super politics like most of what Star Wars is. It also feels like it's going to be very different from what the actual show is, which again, I'm not positive is a great thing because I think that you've built an audience that has an expectation for what it's going to be, and they're probably walking into something very different. Regardless, in order to get ready for it, there are what I believe are some key episodes that you should be checking out. So here's what I think. First and foremost is season 1, episode 3. It's called The Sin. And look, this is the episode where Din officially chooses like Grogu over being a bounty hunter, so to speak, like over that lifestyle. So it helps to solidify what the relationship is between the two of them and sets the rest of where we end up being as we're going into this movie on its course, truthfully. So that episode I think is highly important and you should check that out. The second episode is in season 2. It's episode 5 and it's called The Jedi. This is where we actually get Grogu's name and some of the backstory. So people forget that Slim was just Baby Yoda for the entire first season. So season 2, episode 5, we get a name, we get some backstory, and that name and backstory comes from Ahsoka, which again is a pretty dope moment. Not just as a whole for Star Wars history, period, but like for this timeline specifically, right? It kind of helps us establish what path Grogu is likely to end up being on. And so it again just informs where we need to be going into the movie. The third episode, season 2, episode 8. This episode is called The Rescue. If you know, you know. If you don't, you will. I don't really want to say too much more about it. I'm gonna put the picture up. I'm gonna leave it at that. You need to see that episode. Just make sure you check out the episodes. Episode number 4. All right, so cheating a little. This is actually one of the episodes from the Book of Boba Fett because while you should not watch the Book of Boba Fett season, you shouldn't watch the show. Just let that go. However, there are episodes that are basically dedicated straight to Din Djarin, the Mandalorian. Like Boba Fett's like not even in them. And episode 5 of the Book of Boba Fett is where we get the N1 starfighter, right? And we see the Darksaber. And so that's where that starts to take place. Number 5. Number 5 is the final episode. It is season 3, episode 8, called The Return. This is technically where Din formally does adopt Grogu. And again, really puts us where we would need to be on this path. There are some other episodes in there, like look with Bo-Katan, and again, kind of seeing where the saber ends up at the end of that same episode. But all those things are still very important and are key. But I feel like in terms of like getting in the next couple of days and just getting yourself kind of caught up to where things are, especially if you did watch the show but it's been a while since like this is a good way I think to kind of play catch up and get yourself where you need to be to get ready for the movie. Now, whether or not you're gonna feel like the movie and the show are the same, again, that remains to be seen. It's my opinion based on what I've seen of the trailer, and because it's Disney, that I feel like they are really leaning heavily into Grogu being a much more kid friendly character that they can utilize to bring a younger audience into the Star Wars ecosystem and then begin to introduce them to other things. And so I do think that this movie is truly being used more for that. And it's a thing that I think a lot of the adults are not going to like. But if they're smart enough and they're able to get parents to take kids to go see this,
It's a win.
there may be a sleeper hit here, even if people who think it's supposed to be for them aren't completely happy with what they get. But we'll see. I'm gonna go see it this week and let you know my thoughts next week. Um, but that's it. Those are the 5 episodes that I think you should check out
Solid.
before you get into Mando and Grogu this week. Now, as far as what we need to put a pin in, so there was a new teaser for Lanterns, which is, I guess, DC's show about Green Lanterns. There was a trailer they did already. There was a teaser. There was complaints about it. We could watch it here, but YouTube hates us. So like they hate when we do that. So again, the Put a Pin in It podcast is exclusive to Patreon, and that gives us the opportunity to kind of go in and talk about some other things and spend a little bit more time, and go a little more in depth on some of the additional things that we need to talk about. The other thing we're going to talk about that I just want to talk about it. It doesn't necessarily belong on this show, but many of you are probably unaware of how much I truly enjoy MMA and just a really good fight and seeing people get knocked out. And like, we got to talk about Netflix and MVP and Ronda Rousey in 17 seconds. We kind of got to talk about that. And it's tied into the Mandalorian. It's Gina Carano. You know what I mean? Like, it's tied into Mando. So,
Her character's in limbo somewhere.
yeah. So we got to talk about that. So that'll be your Put a Pin in the podcast. We'll knock that out and get that ready for the Patreon, folks. Look, it's time to close out. You can kind of see in the background. You can't see it great because we're in front of it. But again, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, so please mind your mental health. Slow down. Take some time for yourself. If you need to seek help, do so. Reach out. If you're here and you're listening to this, reach out. Reach out to one of us. You know what I mean? If you need to, we'd be more than happy to take the time. I just think it's one of those things that we're not paying enough attention to, and I really think that ever since COVID, people have kind of been struggling with it, and they've been better about it. But I think a lot of that went away, and things have not gotten necessarily better since those things happened for everyone. A lot of things are progressing in different ways, and I just think it's important to put yourself in a position where you can talk to somebody or acknowledge that things are happening that you're maybe not dealing with in the best of ways, and have a space where you can do that. So, reach out if you need to do so. Now, next week, we are going to have a special guest on. So this will be the day after Memorial Day. Author Susan Quilty is going to join us. She has one of my favorite podcasts, a quick podcast. We're going to talk about it next week. She also has a new audiobook that's out. But get yourself prepared to sit in. There'll be an interview in the beginning of the episode next week. We've known Susan for quite some time. Never had her on the show, but you have heard me talk about her work before. So it'll be good to have her on, and happen to have a chance to converse with her during LotCon, and just thought, you know what, you should come on the show. So we're gonna do that next week. We still have Fan Expo Philly and Big Lick Nova in Manassas coming up at the end of the month. So the last weekend of the month. So that's technically the 29th through the 31st. It's going to be a busy weekend. There's a lot happening. But if you're in the DMV area, highly recommend coming out to Big Lick Comic Con Nova in Manassas. And if you're in the Philadelphia area, then by all means, Fan Expo Philly is a pretty good time. Usually I only shoot up for a day, but it's an excuse to get cheesesteaks, and
never need an excuse for that.
I can't like you don't need an excuse, but like if you have one, like
It makes it better.
you know what I'm saying? You know. Lastly, I want you all, if you are tuning in to wrestling, if you're paying attention to what's happening in wrestling, if you're watching Raw and SmackDown, please make sure that you are, one, following the Finisher podcast on IG. That's Instagram for the old heads. Please make sure you're following the Finisher podcast there. Make sure you're checking out the Finisher podcast when it drops every other Wednesday. That is this Wednesday coming up, Jokes, right?
Yep. So tomorrow, episode lock and load at 10 a.m. We're actually visiting. We've been talking a lot about WWE as of recently, and we had to shift gears a little bit. We make the switch back to AEW because we're seeing a new spotlight on their new champion and MJF, which I'm pretty sure a lot of people, even if you're not watching, you're probably familiar with him just because of how his mouth gets him in trouble from time to time. But we revisit our 4-pillar conversation on who currently we think is making AEW and taking them on the back and running with the company. Because there's been a lot of shifts between injuries, people leaving the company and going back to WWE, and a few other things. But that'll be the main conversation. And then, of course, Marcus does have a rant. There's a rant on this episode, so I would probably tune in to hear Marcus's hot take.
Okay. I'm with it. Look, if you're doing that much, please also make sure you're checking out the 10-minute teardown, which happens following Raw and following SmackDown every Monday, every Friday. When we round out what's happening on those live shows, we are now going live on Instagram. Kay is going live specifically. When I say we, I mean Loading Snacks. Kay is going live to talk about what just happened. And look, a live show like that, really think about it the way you think about the way they used to do like the podcast after The Walking Dead, The Talking Dead, and think about that kind of thing. Just an opportunity to kind of go somewhere where you can talk briefly live about the things that just happened, whether we like it, whether we don't, where we think it's leading, where it's going. I mean, look, the reality of it is that if you're a person who's into and watches wrestling, you like soap operas, and the whole point is to try to guess what's happening next, like what's going on. No point in watching the drama if you can't talk about the drama, right? So Kay puts a lot of time and effort into doing that. We really love for you all to tune in if you're watching those. We are looking at some other ways of kind of doing some interactivity with that. That's a surprise to Jokes because I haven't talked to him about that yet, but I did talk to Kay about it. But look, please make sure you're checking that out. Jokes, can we shut the show down?
I think we can go ahead and shut things down.
Jokes said we can shut it down. So tell the folks what I need them to know.
Remember, y'all, just because you have a well thought out plan doesn't make it a good idea.
With that, we're out. Toodles and loos.
Loading snacks.
No.